projects. Byron, on the other hand, things like films, soundtracks, more arty, more ambient kind of stuff. Stuff that leans really left to centre.
He's really more good at that.
You know what I mean? So when someone rings in, we want to make sure they get the right fit. But anyway, the client comes into here, we have a listen to music, we talk about, and when I hear it, I might say, look, you know, the bottom end's a bit big. I can't tell them exactly what to do, because if I could, then I'd do it myself for a living, but I don't. And offer some kind of suggestion. Also gives the client an opportunity to ask questions of us, because, you know, mastering's touted as this black art, and I hate that. I really want to stop perpetuating that whole myth, and I think it's, you know, it's really pushed a lot by, I think, insecure mastering engineers, quite frankly. And maybe that's a bit controversial, but the reason I say that is because in the same way that the musician has access to recording at home, they can mix at home, they can roll their own stuff. They don't necessarily have to go to a big commercial facility. So what's to stop them doing their own mastering? But, you know, mastering doesn't have a great, doesn't enjoy a lot of prestige, a lot of great profile. And hence that's the reason I think people kind of go, well, you know, what is it, we've heard about it, we know it needs to be done. But, you know, it doesn't really get a lot of press, it doesn't get a lot of profile out there. And so, you know, so a lot of people like to sort of keep it all, you know, secretive, like we're the gatekeepers to the secret society. We're not. We're not brain surgeons, we're not saving the world. We're just craftsmen. All we are, you know, we're facilitators helping a client realise their vision, a conduit, if you will. That's what we are, and first and foremost, we're a service. So, anyway, getting back to talking to the client, it's an opportunity for them to ask questions, and for them to feel comfortable as well. I mean, there's nothing worse, I feel, I can think of an artist, musician coming in, not knowing what mastering is, never having done mastering, having had mixed ideas about it, and then after that having to come in and feel like, I don't think this guy gets my music. Most people wouldn't have the courage to get up and say, look, I'm really sorry, it's not working. But if they come in a meeting and they walk away feeling that, well, you know what, they walk away, there's no damage done, they're not put in a position where they feel obligated. You know, it's just a much nicer way. You know, it's just as much. In fact, it's more so almost like an interview for them to check us out, because once they commit to a session, they're working in a close. You know, I mean, it's a big room, but you know, we're working within a relatively, you know, small space. So it helps to feel comfortable knowing that the person you're working with has, first off, personal empathy, and then some musical empathy with you.
And that you can communicate with them on the same level. Because
that's the whole success. It's communication, it's relationship building. Because again, as we're finding and have been finding, the band you work with today, they may not be around for a second album. It's not very often, or a second EP, but some of those members are working in other bands at the same time, or they know other people. We rely a lot on word of mouth, so we can't be in control of what people may think of us. You know, some guys may think, oh, Jack the Bear, we don't rate him. And that's okay. Everyone's entitled to that. I can't be everyone's best friend. What I work hard on doing is I don't want to give people justifiable cause to say negative things about us and what we do. You know, if you don't like what we do, well, we'll always do our best for you, but hey, it still comes down to subjectivity, and no one can be everybody's best friend. It's just not going to work. You know, you're going to cause more troubles and more problems for yourself than anything else on that.
Absolutely. Now, fixing it in the mix.
Yeah.
Now, versus it'll be okay once it gets to mastering.
Yep.
Now, within your industry, I know that's a fallacy that often gets touted around.
Yeah.
What do you say to people that basically receive that information or are giving that information?
Well, mastering can do a fair bit for you, but it's not the magic bullet. Again, if I give you an analogy, it's like imagine you're building a custom car. You spend all this time in your garage, you've made this custom car, you've made it absolutely beautiful. Our job is to get it ready for the show that you're taking it to. So it'll be cut and polish, it'll be presentation, maybe it might be even doing some lighting to show it in its best light. But our job is not to get out the angle grind and decide, you know what, we like a convertible, we don't like a coupe, or we don't like the Duco, or no, we're going to change the colour of the interior and the seats. It's not about that. So it's a fallacy. I always tell clients, when you go and do your mix, do it as if you were in a world where there was no mastering, that this is the final product. And the irony is that the better the mix, the less it needs to be done, which kind of goes counterintuitive to the idiom of the harder I work, the better it's going to be, where, you know, less is actually more. And there's a lot of power in knowing when to say stop. And, you know, it shouldn't take too long to master stuff. You know, it's not 3 or 4 hours a track or a day like it is in a mix. You know, remember, we're only working with a left and right channel. So we're always going to be at the mercy of it. So I say to people, get your mixes as best as possible. And again, why we invite you to come in at no obligation is so we can have a listen to your mixes and offer you some suggestions in the context of what we're going to be able to, what's going to work for us at mastering, what isn't going to work for us. Some ideas as to what you can do to fix it. It's an insurance policy. Really.
Absolutely.
It's an insurance policy. And to be able to listen to it in a different environment, which, dare I say, in most cases I'd say we probably have something a little better than what most people have at home.
Just a tad.
You know.
Yeah.
Well, nonetheless, you know, it's still something different, you know, because we want the master, you know, to translate well when they leave, whether they're playing it on an iBook or a huge Mantz system in a club, you know, if it's streaming on the internet, on radio station, in the cars, iPods, whatever.
It should translate.
It should translate, and only, again, it'll only suffer because of limitation of the playback system it's played on. But you know, it still should sound. They should still be able to hear it and go, yeah, this is kind of. We remember it sounded like this. Yeah, you know, it sounds much better and it sits better.
Just as a matter of interest, are you guys doing much work for MP3 or other such formats at the moment? Like specifically mastering for that medium, because there is quite a limited bandwidth there.
Yep.
And I would be thinking that I guess the compression approach that you would use would be quite different for that if you're trying to translate the mix across all mediums.
Yeah, I still think that again, if we're looking at translation, I don't believe in the mastering specifically for MP3. Again, look, people could be able to prove me wrong. I'd be happy to hear the argument and be convinced. I'm very open to that. I can tell you right now that mastering for radio is just garbage. It really is. I don't believe in that. Again, other people will differ on opinion, but the reason I say that is that radio stations are always constantly tweaking their sound. They're always in a state of flux. Every radio station sounds different. Triple J, for example, sounds different around different places in Australia. It'll sound different in Broken Hill than what it will sound in Melbourne or in Adelaide or in Sydney. In fact, radio stations can sound different in different parts of the city. And as I said, they're always in flux. So it's a moving target. So how do you predict that? You know, how do you actually so what do? You say, well, look, Triple J this week was sounding a bit dull to me, so maybe I might brighten it up a bit so it doesn't sound really dull. I mean, it's ludicrous. I mean, if you take the playback, the program that's played through the whole day of a radio station, line them up in, say, you know, a digital audio workstation and play them at Unity, you tell me what's the common thread between them that makes them work on radio. You know, by taking that approach of, oh, you have to master specifically for radio, there must be some, you know, and if there was, then surely wouldn't Waves or someone have done a plugin by now to say radio preset? I don't know of one that I've seen or heard of. Again, I could be wrong. There's millions of plugins and stuff out there. So again, it's like, make the track sound good. And again, even with all this MP3 stuff, you know, different people are using different kind of algorithms. So how do we know whether, you know, this does a better job at compressing it, this doesn't, you know, other people say, oh, don't use iTunes, it's this, or, you know, don't use this program, it's that. So again, I still believe it comes down to that basic fundamental. Make the track sound the best you can make it sound.